Well, we kind of left off with you talking about the counseling aspect of being a vasectomy provider, that you enjoyed the kind of connections that you had to make with guys who were deciding to end their fertility. And so I just wondered, you know, how much of, how you enjoyed that and what you ended up talking about with guys most of the time when you were counseling, especially as they were a little bit undecided.
Yeah. Um, and I think the answer is and one of the things that makes the whole career interesting and fulfilling is it varies as much as the guys do, right? It's each conversation is where that patient takes you. And so your attempt in a very rapid way when you come in and greet someone you've not met before is to shut up and listen and look, check the body language, and just just be an observer. And I mean, you can tell a lot by looking at somebody, but then you can tell a lot more when they start to speak. But if you're doing all the talking, you lose a lot. And so getting them to speak, getting them to talk is the real challenge, and that's where you win. So often they don't want to talk for lots of reasons. They're intimidated, or they're embarrassed, or they're scared, or they don't know what to say. And so you need to say enough to put them at ease, to gain their trust, so that they can open up and be honest and themselves with you. So the quicker and the better you can do that, put them at ease, and humor is great for that. And there's always great chances for humor in the vasectomy clinic. What I'm telling you all comes from family practice and 40 years of family medicine is you're going to be a much more efficient doctor no matter what you're working on if you can rapidly win the trust of your patient. So my job when I come in as a doctor is really just that part, to get to relate to the patient and help them be comfortable, and ask any secret questions they didn't want to say to someone else. What you need is uh, uh, to have convinced yourself that they are totally um, on board and understand and accept the procedure. The reason this is so important is not just uh, coming in or doing the procedure. It's that every once in a while, one of these patients, and you don't know which one, is going to end up being the guy with the complication. You're going to end up spending a lot of time with this guy, with his wife, sometimes with the family, because you're going to visit at home and check up on him, with his doctor. You're going to talk to his doctor. You're going to be very intimately involved with this fellow uh, during his recovery from his complication, because that's essentially that's what you do. You don't can't operate on somebody unless you're there for them and you're willing and able to take care of them all the way through the operation, the recovery, and any complications, anything that goes on with them. So it's kind of like in merchandising, the service after the sale or whatever, the return policy or whatever like that. You're not going to be great at what you do in any business if you're not there for your customer. Is another way to say it, but it certainly has to it rings true in patient care. So you want to be there for them. You want to make sure that you've got a pretty good idea who they are to start with, and then that you'll be able to work with them if you do get into complications or problems.
That's great. If you were starting over right now, what advice would you give yourself if you could, with the wisdom that you've acquired? What would you tell your starting out self?
I guess when you start off deciding you want to be a doctor, you start off committing yourself to the service of others, and you can't ever forget that. And if you ever think that you're the one that's most important in the room, just go home.
Hmm,
You made a
good
mistake.
point. Yeah.
Uh, you are always there to serve your patient. And some patients you can't really help. They have pathology that you can't fix. But it's all about the patient. You know, what's in the patient's best interest, and what have you learned? What do you know? What can you do to help that patient? And so that's true whether you're doing vasectomies or doing heart surgery or delivering babies or dealing with newborns with a congenital abnormality. It doesn't matter. It's all doctoring, and that's what you go to med school to learn.
When you look back at your career, what are the things that really you're going to remember, highlights that you're proud of or that made really a difference to you now, because you got the hindsight since you've retired?
Yeah. Yeah, I have been reflecting upon that a little bit. This is my 75th year, 76th year. I'm not operating, and I am reflecting every once in a while on my career, 20 years in family practice and delivering 1,000 babies and taking care of old folks at the end of life and all that wonderful stuff that makes up life. And 23,000 vasectomies and setting up the clinic to be very efficient. And I had the time to put the systems together to run this clinic exactly the way I want it. Because my clinic, I wrote the software, I've set up the policy procedure manual, I hired the people. They all stayed with me for very long periods of time because they were all very much involved in the mission that we set up the practice with. And that was what made it all worthwhile and made it work well and made it worthy of keeping and expanding. We now have the organization setting up new clinics in other cities and trying to do the same thing the same way. So that's those are career highlights that I really feel good about and enjoy. The phase of life with vasectomies is really an interesting one because it's a major life decision for most of the couples. Sometimes it's a decision delayed and should have been made a long time ago, and they finally get off the couch and come in, and it's like, dude, where have you been all this time, you know? And so and that's how I got into vasectomy. I don't know if you're interested in that, but I was doing a lot of OB, but I also did abortions in an abortion clinic to help out the docs that were busy doing that, and I did vasectomies in that clinic as well, and that's how I got started doing so many vasectomies and interested in tweaking the procedure and making it better with better outcomes, less complications. Made the instruments to make that possible, and read up from people like Stanley Schmidt and Alderman and the other people that had advanced much further than I in vasectomies. But the driving force was I'd be doing these abortions, and then their partner would come in and have their vasectomy, and we're doing like abortion, vasectomy. I go, why don't we just do the vasectomy and not the abortion part? I mean, let's get rid of unwanted pregnancies and not put women through this by just making vasectomy so much easier. Because the answer was always the same. It's like, yeah, I knew I needed to do something, but I was scared, or I didn't know about it, or I didn't know where to find out about it or something. So the guy finally shows up and gets his vasectomy, but it's after the fact of an unwanted pregnancy. So I said, well, okay, I can make this really easy because vasectomy is very simple. I'm just going to write everything you need to know about vasectomy, and I'm going to mail it out to anyone who wants to know. And I'm going to start a clinic on my Saturdays. I was doing family practice, so it's a Saturday morning clinic. We didn't normally see patients. We saw emergency patients on Saturdays, but normally we didn't. So I just said, okay, Saturday mornings I'm going to do vasectomies as many as people want to do. It'll be easy for them. They won't miss work. They'll get back to work on Monday. So I started a Saturday morning vasectomy clinic. Had my one nurse came in. She and I did everything, and I wrote this informational booklet and mailed out. But I called the clinic the Vasectomy Clinic. I said, let's just put it up there, and that way, if anyone wants to know about vasectomy, they got no excuse. All they have to do is call. We'll send them all the stuff, and then we'll make the procedure as easy as we can make it for them. And that's how I got started in doing this back in 1987.
And how did you get the name Dr. Snip?
Well, that's interesting. One of my patients, who was a popular, well-read newspaper reporter, uh, called me up after his procedure. He said, Doc, I want to do an article on your clinic because I've talked to so many guys who've been there, and it's such a cool thing, and people ought to know more about it. I said, that sounds great to me. Let's do it. And so he came back as a reporter and sat next to patients while they were having their vasectomy, took notes and everything, and he picked up on all the jokes and all the lines and all that the humor part of it. But then he went back and he was cutting and pasting in his office, putting the article together, and he says, "No, Doc, did I get this right?" And he'd read something to me. I'd say, "Yeah, that's right. You got it just right." He says, "Now, is there kind of a nickname, that people call you, something, fun I could use in here?" I said, "No." And so then he wrote the article, got it through his editor, put it in the newspaper, and it was the morning newspaper, shows up at 6 o'clock on your doorstep, and on the above the banner of the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, in big letters right across the top of the newspaper on a Monday morning, was Dr. Snip, and then a little photo, and then the article was entitled Dr. Snip, and so he coined that word. And I thought, well, that's not bad. I'll take that. That's okay. And so that sort of became in Seattle a local moniker that people called me. And I eventually, the internet was brand new, so I got the URL drsnip.com, and we started using that a bit, and then just used it in marketing for the clinic, and eventually all the doctors that work for me. So it's all Dr. Snip. But it was just make it fun, make it familiar, make it easy for people to find you, and that's how that came about.
Lovely. That's great. Well, I think we really have enough for the newsletter, although I can always keep doing this. This is fun, and I really enjoy it, Chick.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank
much for
you.
making yourself available.